On my daughter's birthday, my wife took her to the amusement park to play. After rushing to finish my work, I bought my daughter's favorite popsicles and hurried over, only to see my daughter snuggled in the arms of my wife's male assistant, eating Haagen-Dazs. Uncle Yumming, I wish you were my real dad. My dad is old and ugly. He can't compare to you at all. My daughter's words pierced my heart deeply. I no longer wanted to compromise my dignity for anyone. So, I submitted my application to the Western Development Program. Since they no longer needed me, I would go where the motherland needed me, to bring warmth to struggling families and children. In the office, Brother Zhao looked solemnly at my application form. Junsheng, are you truly decided? I am. He had personally mentored and promoted me, treating me like a younger brother. I understood his concerns, yet I still nodded to him without hesitation. He sighed. Junsheng, 10 years is no trifling matter. Once you make this decision, there's no turning back. Moreover, can you bear to leave your wife and child? What will they do when you're gone? I shook my head with a faint smile, looking at him gratefully. I know the conditions there are harsh, but I worked my way up from the grassroots myself. I'm not afraid of hardship. Besides, my ancestral home is there. I'm part of those impoverished Western regions too. There are more families and children there who need me. Just like that slogan says, go to the West, go where the motherland needs you. As for them, they don't need me anymore. Brother Zhao's eyes reddened. He stood up and patted my shoulder, speaking with profound sincerity. Junsheng, I wasn't wrong about you. You're a good lad. I'll always support you. Spend these 3 days saying proper goodbyes to your family. Contact me anytime if you need help. Brother Zhao didn't try to dissuade me further. He knew once I set my mind to something, I'd never waver. Walking out of the office, I tilted my head back to gaze at the sky. What I saw was a vast, boundless expanse of azure blue, just like my vibrant and hopeful future. However, when I arrived home, before even stepping through the door, I heard laughter and cheerful voices inside. My daughter said happily, Uncle Yumming, your cooking is so delicious, way better than Dad's. Even though I'd heard such words many times before, my heart still ached when I heard them again. I steadied my emotions, forced a smile, and opened the door. I'm back. With a bang, the moment I opened the door, I accidentally bumped into my daughter Chu Fudong's head. I had no idea when she had run over here. The cheerful laughter came to an abrupt halt. Chu Fudong clutched her head, grimacing in pain, and pointed at me irritably as she shouted, What are you doing? Can't you see I'm here? I hurriedly apologized, concernedly trying to move her hand away to check if her forehead was injured. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Let Dad check if there's any scraped skin. She swatted away my outstretched hand. You did it on purpose. Do you know what day it is? Today's my birthday. Uncle Yuming knew to buy me treats and play with me, but all you care about is work. My smile froze on my face. How could I forget her birthday? Remembering the scene at the amusement park this morning, a sour bitterness of grievance welled up in my chest. Before I could speak, Chu Furong darted up to me and shoved me hard. Bad Daddy, I hate you. Her strength was small, but that shove made my heart ache faintly. Gu Yumming stepped forward to restrain her, educating her gently. Furong, what did Uncle tell you? You mustn't be rude to your own father. Then, he looked up at me apologetically. I'm sorry, Junsheng. I've spoiled her too much. Let me apologize on her behalf. He carried himself with the full demeanor of a true master of the house, implicitly and explicitly positioning himself as Chu Fudong's biological father, as if I were the outsider. Chu Fudong couldn't help muttering. Why should Uncle Yumming apologize to him? It was his fault all along. I clenched my lower lip to alleviate even a 10,000th of the pain in my heart. Mustering all my strength, I shook the gift in my hand and forced a smile. Tong Tong, it's Daddy's fault. Look what I brought you. Your favorite Barbie doll set. Looking at her features that somewhat resemble mine, I recalled how she used to snuggle happily in my arms whenever receiving Barbie dolls, and a surge of anticipation welled up within me. Those warm and cherished moments are something I need to treasure for a lifetime. Yet somehow, without noticing when it began, our relationship has deteriorated into this state of irreconcilable differences. After hearing my words, Chu Fudong threw herself into Gu Yumming's arms without turning her head back. Who wants your stupid dolls? Uncle Yumming can buy me 10, 100 of them. After shouting at me, she ignored me and started playing with the puzzle on the floor. As she pieced it together, she seemed to hit a snag, her little face scrunching into a frown. Staring at her round, tender cheeks, I forced myself to approach her despite the heartache. Where are you stuck, Fudong? Daddy can help you. Who wants your help? Don't you have anything better to do? Don't touch my puzzle. I want Uncle Yumming. Hearing this, Gu Yumming feigned anger to scold her. Fudong, your daddy means well. Besides, he's smarter than me and can help you finish the puzzle better. Be good and let your daddy look at your puzzle. As he spoke, he picked up the puzzle to hand it to me. Chu Furong instantly flew into a temper, snatching the puzzle and tearing it in half with a crash. I won't let him touch my things. I hate him. I don't want to see him. My throat was so bitter I couldn't speak. I reached out to hold her hand, but she pushed me away and turned to hug Gu Yuming, crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. I want Uncle Yuming, not Daddy. I could only retract my outstretched hand and anxiously tried to calm her. Okay, Daddy won't touch you. Let Uncle Yuming stay with you. I didn't want to leave her with more bad memories during the remaining 3 days. I just wanted her to be happy. That was enough. Gu Yuming held Fudong and gave me an apologetic smile. Sorry, Junsheng. Fudong isn't usually like this. She's probably too upset today. It is her birthday and you. I stayed silent for a moment, then forced a smile to show him I was fine. He didn't need to apologize. Fudong's dislike was hers alone. It had nothing to do with him. I never imagined Fudong would detest me to this extent, not even letting me touch her toys. At that moment, Fu Yining walked out of the bedroom, glaring at me displeased. Every time you return, you upset Furong. Can't you compromise a little? Shame on you for being her biological father. Even Yuming does better than you. Fu Yining approached, disdain filling her eyes as she stared at my exposed forearm. And from now on, don't expose your arms outside. It'll scare Fudong. I lowered my head, awkwardly covering my scarred arm. This was caused a few days ago when Fudong had a fever, threw a tantrum refusing medicine, and knocked over a cup. The glass was slammed by her onto the table. Splintered glass fragments flew up and cut across my skin, leaving a shocking trail of blood. Fu Yaning was also present at the scene back then and witnessed everything. Until now, not only has there been no word of comfort, but she also exposed my sore spot in front of our daughter. I silently returned to my room. The moment I closed the door, I heard Fudong's cheerful laughter. Yay, the annoying dad is finally gone. All my classmates' dads are handsome, but mine always makes me a laughingstock. Uncle Yuming is so much cooler. I wish Uncle Yuming were my dad instead. Fu Yaning glanced at Gu Yuming and smiled. Since you adore Uncle Yuming so much, how about letting him pick you up from school from now on? Fudong immediately asked excitedly. Really? Gu Yuming also glanced at Fu Yaning, then patted Fudong's head with a smile. Of course. Inside the room, I listened to these knife-sharp words, my fingers unconsciously digging deep into my palms. Soon. I'll be leaving very soon. Perhaps from exhaustion, I drifted into sleep unknowingly. The next morning, I was jolted awake by the violent sound of the door being shoved open. Dad, are you a pig? It's already 7. Why are you still in bed? Normally, I would scold her for such words. But now, I just want to cherish these final days with her. What's wrong, Tong? She had just woken up too, her hair slightly messy, even with a tuft sticking straight up on top of her head. I was about to reach out to tidy her hair, but she dodged away in disgust. Uncle Yuming just secured a major project today. Mom wants to throw him a celebration banquet, and she wants you to bring a gift and come with us. Throw a celebration banquet for Gu Yuming? Buy a gift and attend? I glanced at the date on my phone and couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Fu Yining seemed to have forgotten. Today was the 10th anniversary of our relationship. Perhaps she already had a better candidate in mind, but none of that mattered anymore. Now, I no longer wanted to dwell on it. When I went downstairs, the 3 of them were already waiting for me below. At the sight of them, ripples stirred in my previously calm heart. All 3 wore outfits in the same color scheme, like coordinated family-matching clothes. Fudong held Gu Yuming's hand with one hand and Fu Yining's with the other, hopping around joyfully. Fu Yining's face also wore a smile rarely seen in daily life. They looked exactly like a family of 3. I watched their retreating figures, suppressing the bitterness in my heart while constantly comforting myself. It's fine. It'll be over soon. Very soon. Upon entering the restaurant, the trio's coordinated outfits immediately drew the attention of many diners. Several young girls crowded around Chu Furong. What an adorable little sweetheart. She's utterly charming. Chu Furong beamed with joy after being praised and asked one of the girls with a grin. Big sister, don't we look like a family? Of course you do. You're all wearing family-matching outfits, and you look just like your daddy. I wordlessly turned my gaze toward Gu Yuming. As if sensing my stare, Gu Yuming quickly glanced at me awkwardly. Junsheng, don't mind it. They didn't know. That's why they misunderstood. Hearing this, the young girl's expression toward us shifted abruptly, and she hurriedly apologized. In the end, both she and her friend looked at me with eyes full of pity. I forced a faint smile and shook my head slightly. Although this scenario has played out countless times in my life, each repetition still pierces my heart with fresh pain. Fudong is my daughter, yet she takes perverse pleasure in belittling and humiliating me before outsiders. What father's heart wouldn't be shattered by this? My mood plummeted accordingly, and I remained distracted throughout the meal. Fu Yining slammed her wine glass onto the table with a bang, startling me. Chu Junsheng, if you don't want to eat, don't come. Who are you dragging that long face around for? Fudong also said unhappily, today is the day when Uncle Yuming secured the major project. Dad, can't you stop making that expression? It wasn't pleasant to look at before, and now it's even uglier. My classmates all say you're not as handsome as Uncle Yumming. I had only been to Fudong's school once, to attend a parent-teacher meeting. I was delayed by some matters and arrived late. When I got there, I realized Fu Yining had already arranged for Gu Yumming to attend Fudong's parent-teacher conference. I saw Fudong beaming with joy as she introduced to classmates how handsome and dashing Uncle Yumming was. I intended to leave quietly, but Gu Yumming called out to me right there. Chu Fudong felt my presence had humiliated her in front of classmates and threw a massive tantrum at me. Memories flooded back, and overwhelmed by sorrow, I gave Fudong an apologetic smile. Sorry, Tong Tong. Dad failed to control his emotions. I apologize. Fu Yining looked at me with mild astonishment. She had expected me to lecture Chu Fudong as usual. She always detested my officious manner, believing I'd grown too accustomed to being a cadre, even subjecting my own child to this. Now that I changed my approach, she mocked sarcastically the sun must be rising from the west. She didn't spare me another glance, turning instead to cheerfully amuse Fudong together with Gu Yumming. I sat alone across from them, watching their laughter and cheerful conversations. Even I myself feel that they resemble a happy family more, while I'm merely an unnoticed outsider. After who knows how long, I hear Chu Fudong ask Gu Yumming, Uncle Yumming, how did you and Mom meet? She blinks her dewy eyes, like a curious child yearning to know about her parents' romantic history, even though the person she's asking isn't her father. I didn't want to hear about how they met, yet I couldn't stop their voices from reaching my ears. Gu Yumming was someone Fu Yining had met shortly after she and I got married. At that time, she had just married me, whom she'd met through a blind date and shared little affection with. Gu Yumming was exceptionally capable. Though not highly educated, he was diligent, hardworking, and possessed solid professional expertise. Everyone assumed that someone as outstanding as him wouldn't be content to remain as Fu Yining's secretary. Yet he not only stayed but also worked harder and harder. From the company to the home, anyone with eyes could see he harbored affection for Fu Yining. Because during his interview, the elevator he took malfunctioned and lost power, triggering his claustrophobia. It was Fu Yining who discovered this and continuously comforted him until rescue arrived. But Fu Yining never accepted his feelings. She was a very traditional person who believed that since she was already married, she couldn't do anything to betray her family. Thus, Gu Yumming willingly remained her secretary, accompanying her all along. They publicly claimed to be soulmates and spiritual partners in work. I lowered my head, using my bangs to hide my slightly reddened eyes. Mom, if only you had met Uncle Yumming first. That would have been the romantic love story like the ones on TV. Fudong's words, spoken in a regretful tone, made my heart ache as if it were bleeding. Fu Yining became slightly embarrassed by Fudong's words, feigning anger to silently warn Fudong with her gaze not to speak carelessly. I simply smiled nonchalantly. Tong Tong isn't wrong. It's all Dad's fault for blocking Mom and Uncle Yumming's love story. I reached out to take Fudong's hand, but she disgustedly avoided my touch. I felt as if I had been slapped hard across the face. My hand froze mid-air, taking a long moment before I managed to withdraw it. This meal was flavorless to me, yet the laughter among the three of them never ceased. But it's okay. Seeing them live happily and contentedly allows me to leave with peace of mind. After dinner, I excused myself for urgent matters and walked alone on the bustling streets. The city blazed brightly at night, yet not a single light shone for me. I miss my grandmother. The call connected, and almost the moment I heard Grandma's voice, my eyes reddened. Junxing, with Grandma not around. Have you been eating properly? Grandma, After just a few words, my voice choked up too much to continue. I was raised by Grandma since childhood. Though she's in a mountain village thousands of kilometers away, she could still accurately sense my emotions. Junxing, you've grown up now with your own ideas. Rest assured, whatever you do, Grandma will support you unconditionally. You've been sensible since childhood, never giving me worries. I know you've always pursued what you wanted. Child, if you want to do it, then go do it. From childhood to adulthood, Grandma never believed studying was useless like other families, but would rather sell the wok and scrap metal to send me to school. She said, Junxing, you should leave these mountains to see the outside world. But just as fallen leaves return to their roots, Grandma hopes you won't forget your original aspirations. My original aspiration was small, just wanting Grandma to also leave the man-eating mountains. My original aspiration was also grand. I wanted all mountain children to escape these mountains and change their destinies. I was already choking back sobs. I understand, Grandma. Please take care of yourself. Good child, don't cry. Your grandma's bones are still sturdy. No need to worry. Grandma, I've transferred all the money I've earned these years to your card. I'll divorce Fu Yining in a few days. I don't care if she remarries. I only care about Fudong. Grandma, please wait a little longer. I'll be back soon. I quickly hung up, afraid Grandma would worry if she heard me crying. I wandered aimlessly on the streets, returning home well past midnight. Fudong was already asleep, but Gu Yuming remained. These years, he'd spent nearly half his time living in my home under the pretext of taking care of Fudong. When I was heading back to my room, I passed by Fu Yining's bedroom and heard Gu Yuming's voice. Yiningjia, Valentine's Day is coming soon. Will you spend it with me? My heart skipped a beat. Before hearing Fu Yining's reply, I fled the scene immediately. Even though my heart was already riddled with scars, I still feared hearing answers I didn't want to hear. Tomorrow marks my departure. I returned to my room and packed everything I needed to bring. I left behind all items related to Fu Yining. Those expensive yet perfunctory gifts. I used to cherish them dearly, but now I don't want to take a single one. The next morning when I left my room, Chu Fudong happened to be heading to kindergarten. I joined them to send her off, as a final farewell. After getting out of the car at the kindergarten, Fudong naturally kissed Gu Yuming. To be honest, I felt envious and jealous. I also wished to receive Fudong's warm response before I depart. So I walked up to Fudong and spread my arms open. Tong Tong, can you give Daddy a hug too? I didn't expect her to kiss me like she just did. I only wished she could hug me. Yet she didn't even spare me a glance, walking straight to Fu Yining instead. Mom, class is about to start. I'll go first. My spread arms froze midair. Fu Yining saw me like this and sneered. When did you become so sentimental? It's not like we'll never see each other again. They didn't know. For me, this truly was goodbye forever. I forced a wry smile and withdrew my hand. When I returned home at noon, the company vehicle had already arrived to pick me up. The colleague helping me load luggage kept glancing around. Brother Chu, are your family members inside? You should say proper goodbyes. We're not in a hurry. No need. Let's go. On the way passing Fudong's kindergarten, I saw her rush into Gu Yuming's arms right after school. Her smile was so bright. How long has it been since she smiled at me like that? I don't know when I'll see Fudong again after this departure. The colleague driving asked worriedly. Brother Chu, are you okay? I lowered my slightly reddened eyelids. I'm fine. I leaned back on the car seat with closed eyes to rest, yet my mind was filled with Fudong's figure. Her tears, her smiles, her anger, her shyness. I repeatedly convinced myself this was for the best, that I needed to let go. I pursued what I wanted to do, what I ought to do, embracing my original aspirations and dreams. We too have loved ones and cherished people to protect. Nothing could be better than this. Watching their family of 3, I silently whispered in my heart, goodbye. The vehicle sped away into the distance. However, at the moment when my car passed by the 3 of them, Fu Yining turned her head to look in my direction, a trace of confusion appearing on her face. What's wrong, Sister Yining? Gu Yuming asked her. Fu Yining furrowed her brows. I thought I saw. Suddenly, an ominous premonition surged in her heart. She couldn't help sending me a message, only to find she'd been deleted from my friends list. What's happening? The displeasure of being deleted immediately made Fu Yining's eyebrows knot tightly. She dialed my number to demand an explanation, only to find that her number had been blocked by me. Her face instantly turned ashen. Sister Yining, are you feeling unwell somewhere? Before she could answer him, she blurted out, take Fudong to dinner. I need to go home, and drove off without looking back. Upon arriving home, she immediately flung open the door to my bedroom, only to find it completely empty. Disbelieving, she opened every cabinet, yet found not a single trace of me. She stood frozen in place for a long time, as if time itself had come to a standstill. Sister Yining. When Gu Yuming entered, he saw her sitting disheveled on the floor. Her arms clutched a piece of clothing tightly, her gaze vacant, murmuring incoherently under her breath. Sister Yining, what on earth happened? Fu Yining seemed deaf to his words, merely repeating 2 phrases over and over. Impossible. He loved this gift from me the most. How could he bear to abandon it? Impossible. Gu Yuming feigned surprise. What? Brother Junxing left, his eyes betraying a glint of pleasure. Chu Fudong, who had entered unnoticed, snatched the garment and stomped it beneath her feet. Mom, why are you upset over that kind of man leaving? Now that he's gone, nothing will disturb our trio anymore. Uncle Yuming can finally become my dad. Similar declarations had spilled from Chu Fudong's lips countless times in his presence. But this time, she finally sensed something amiss. She pulled Fudong in front of her and angrily scolded her. Who told you to speak about your own father like that? Chu Fudong was startled by her hysterical state and burst into uncontrollable tears. Fu Yining, distracted and agitated by the crying, cast a cold gaze at Gu Yuming. Didn't I tell you to take her out to eat? Fudong wanted you to be with her. Sister Yining, what exactly happened? Gu Yuming looked at her cautiously. He never expected that my departure would make Fu Yining go to such lengths. What does all those years of hard work and careful planning amount to then? Fudong fearfully quieted down and looked at Fu Yining with placating eyes. Mommy, please don't be angry anymore. I was wrong. Fu Yining composed herself somewhat, roughly wiped her tearful eyes, and took Fudong's hand. Tong Tong, Mommy will take you back to Daddy's hometown. Let's go find Daddy, okay? Daddy loves you so much. If you act a little coquettish with him, he'll definitely come back. Fu Yining believed that this time, I was just throwing a tantrum as usual, and that as long as she brought Fu Tong to find me, I would surely soften my heart and return. Fu Dong didn't dare to refuse and nodded her head. At Fu Dong's request, Fu Yaning brought Gu Yuming along. Several days later, the trio arrived at my grandmother's house. The moment they entered, Fu Yaning unceremoniously shouted toward the interior of the house. Chu Junxing, enough is enough. We've come to take you home. Yeah, Daddy, hurry back with us. Mom and Uncle Yuming are super busy. Grandma inside heard the commotion and hurried out with her cane. Seeing her adorable great-granddaughter, she frantically dug out a lollipop. Fu Dong scrunched up her face in disgust and turned away, refusing to take it. What are you doing here? Grandma asked without anger, her gaze settling on Fu Yining, then shifting to Gu Yuming and pausing for a moment. When I didn't show up for a long time, Fu Yining's face gradually darkened. We came to take Junxing home. Junxing isn't here. Didn't he tell you? Grandma thought I had informed them before leaving, but apparently they knew nothing about it. Tell me what? Fu Yining thought my grandmother was playing riddles with her and asked impatiently. Seeing Fu Yining's attitude, Grandma calmly sat down instead. Yining, over all these years, Junxing found it hard to say some things to you. Let this old woman have a chat with you today. Since Junxing chose to leave, I fully support him. If you think Fu Dong will affect your remarriage after divorce, you can send Fu Dong to me. Grandma's gaze became piercing when she looked at Gu Yuming. Also, my house doesn't welcome unsavory people. I won't tell you where Junxing went. Just know he's gone to a better place. Grandma's unyielding attitude infuriated Fu Yining, who kicked over a nearby chair with her foot. Can't I even know where my husband has gone? What divorce? If I don't agree, let's see how he can divorce me. Afterward, Fu Yining stayed at Grandma's house with Fu Dong. In an awkward position, Gu Yuming could only find a rundown hotel nearby to make do for a few days. He had urged Fu Yining countless times to leave, but she rejected all his pleas, which finally ignited his anger. Fu Yining, have you ever considered my feelings? What are you doing? Trying to win back Chu Junxing? Then what am I? I've stayed with you all these years without status, even raising your child. How could he not know how many people Frau Gout the company were whispering behind his back? Fu Yining stared at him coldly. Gu Yuming, it was you who insisted on staying by my side as a secretary back then. You said yourself you wanted nothing in return but to accompany me. And the salary I pay you is many times higher than others in the same position. You're getting more than your fair share. Gu Yuming's eyes instantly reddened. He never expected Fu Yining to humiliate him like this in front of his grandmother and the child. Chu Fudong stepped in front of Gu Yuming. Mommy can't scold Uncle Yuming. Fu Yining froze, suddenly realizing that in Fudong's heart, Gu Yuming had long become her favorite person. Even she, her own mother, might not compare. Fu Yining's anger flared. She pulled Fudong before her. Fudong, did I teach you to treat your father this way? If you'd been kinder to Daddy, he wouldn't have abandoned us. Fudong burst into tears of grievance. But Mommy said it yourself. You said Daddy can't compare to Uncle Yuming. That Uncle Yuming treats me better. Gu Yuming had long since stormed off in anger, nowhere to be found. Grandma seemed intent on venting my grievances, neither comforting the child nor scolding sternly. Fu Yaning, today I finally understand why Junxing left. My greatest regret now is agreeing to let Junxing marry you. As you've seen these past few days, Junxing isn't here at all. You may leave now. Grandma stood up, pushed Fu Yaning and Chu Furong out the door with some force, and slammed the door shut. Fu Yaning lingered unwillingly outside the door for a long time, believing she could wait for my arrival. Unfortunately, I never appeared. It wasn't until Fu Yaning left with Furong that Grandma slowly reopened the door. Her eyes were already swollen from crying. The moment Fu Yaning returned home, she sent people to track me down and investigate all my movements, but all efforts proved futile. A week later, she finally thought of Brother Zhao. Despite Brother Zhao finding various excuses to politely decline meetings with her, she persisted in waiting daily at his office door. Brother Zhao had no choice but to meet her. Brother Zhao, you must know where Chu Junxing went. Just tell me his whereabouts. I promise I'll never bother you again. He's my husband, the father of my child. We can't lose him. Brother Zhao looked with pity at the haggard woman before him, saying, Yining, I've heard about all the things you've done. The fact that Junxing hasn't exposed your affairs to public scrutiny, but merely asked you to sign the divorce papers, is already showing you great respect. Listen to me, sign the divorce agreement. Let's have an amicable separation. Brother Zhao knew I was doing this to prevent Fudong from being looked down upon by others, so he patiently tried to persuade Fu Yining. But Fu Yining couldn't care less about any of this. She just wanted to find me. What did I do? I never touched Gu Yuming. I didn't cheat. What right does he have to divorce me? If you don't tell me where Chu Junxing is, I'll come ask you every single day. Brother Zhao wasn't one to be intimidated. Having lost all patience, he directly called security to have her thrown out, and ordered the security department never to let her in again. Yet she still appeared unfailingly at the main gate every day, scanning every person entering and exiting for any trace of my face. But the result remained nothing. It was as if I'd suddenly vanished into thin air, with no trace of my presence to be found in any corner. Fu Yining was utterly despairing. I had left, and Gu Yuming refused to continue caring for Chu Furong. She had to personally handle Furong's daily trivial matters every day, which drove her to the brink of a headache. Yet, what shocked her even more was Gu Yuming's sudden resignation, along with him poaching over half of her company's core employees. Her life was now completely devoid of hope. In the dead of night, she clung to Chu Furong and broke down sobbing. Furong was utterly helpless. She could only awkwardly comfort her mother by following my example. "Mommy, be good. Mommy, don't cry. Fudong can buy you candy." Hearing these familiar words, Fu Yaning wept even more bitterly. But tears couldn't solve problems. She had to become strong. Otherwise, she couldn't afford to raise her daughter and might even accumulate piles of debt. Meanwhile, I had already settled down in the countryside. Though relatively poor and backward, this place had charming scenery and fresh air. The villagers were simple and honest, showing great enthusiasm towards newly arrived cadres. I felt happy, believing I'd made the right decision. Rather than entangling in romantic affairs in big cities, it was better to realize my own value here. Here, I would spare no effort to illuminate the development path of this village. Time flew by, and when I left the village, my temples had already turned gray. Villagers seeing me off followed step by step to the village entrance, bidding farewell with red-rimmed eyes and reluctant to part. For nearly 3 decades, under my leadership, some had built their fortunes while others enjoyed moderately prosperous lives. This village has been lifted out of poverty and completely transformed, keeping pace with economic development. They hugged me one by one, expressing their reluctance to part. "Dad," when I was about to embrace the last villager, my heart skipped a beat. "Fudong." I carefully examined the features of the person before me, feeling somewhat uncertain. Fudong, with tears streaming down her face, had already embraced me tightly, apologizing repeatedly. For the past 30 years, every time she recalled how she treated her father in her childhood, she wished she could slap herself twice. How could she have hurt her father so deeply? "Good child, Dad doesn't blame you." I patted her shoulder, softly reassuring her. At that moment, an old woman with a full head of white hair walked out from behind her. "Dad, this is my mom. Can you still recognize her?" I watched her trembling figure walk unsteadily towards me. The traces of time were also etched upon her face. She kept her head down, too uneasy to meet my gaze. "Junsheng, these years, have you been well?" "I've been well." Time had long smoothed away my resentment toward her. Instead, I somewhat admired her resilience in raising Fudong alone all these years. I glanced around. "Where's Gu Yuming?" Fudong frowned with visible disgust at the name. "Don't know. He left after you did." "Your mother never stayed with him?" I was surprised. I'd assumed they'd have no obstacles to growing old together after my departure. "Dad, you didn't know. Not only did he leave, he took half my mom's company's key staff. If Mom hadn't used the money you left to rebuild from scratch, we'd have ended up homeless beggars." Who could have imagined Fudong, who adored Gu Yuming so much as a child, would now utter his name with such revulsion? My heart swelled with both sorrow and guilt. It's all my fault. After all, if I hadn't left her, she wouldn't have gone through so much hardship. It's my fault for being an incompetent father. Fudong quickly shook her head at me and took my hand. "Dad, you don't need to blame yourself. It was my fault for being too foolish and unable to see people clearly when I was young. Dad, do you know? When I learned you were selected as a national role model by the country, I was so excited and proud. I was just short of grabbing a loudspeaker to brag everywhere that I'm your daughter." I could tell she was genuinely proud of me. A warm current seemed to surge through my heart. At Fudong's request, I brought her and Fu Yining to Beijing to receive the award. 30 long years later, I stood on the nation's most respected award podium. I was no longer the father despised by his own daughter. What brought me the greatest joy was helping countless villagers and children escape poverty. Please welcome Mr. Chu Juanxing to deliver his acceptance speech. My throat tightened slightly. Sometimes we are like a dandelion. We can be as free as the wind, yet also take root like a mighty tree. It is precisely because countless dandelions like me have taken root and blossomed where our motherland needs us that we've achieved so many great accomplishments today. I hope every one of us can be like dandelions, to pursue, to dedicate, and to create our own youth. As applause erupted, I seemed to see my grandmother smiling with pride at me from the audience. Just a few days after returning from Beijing, I suddenly collapsed. Fudong wept by my hospital bed, crying her eyes out. "Dad, how could you not take better care of yourself?" After being rushed to the hospital, the doctors diagnosed me with terminal stage stomach cancer. Years of accumulation left no room for recovery. Many people came and went by my sickbed, from city mayors and provincial governors down to ordinary citizens. They encouraged me, praised me, but my eyes grew heavier, and the strength in my hands faded. Fudong seemed to perceive my thoughts. She tightly grasped my hand, tears streaming down like broken strings of pearls. Dad, open your eyes and look at me. Dad, I've always wanted to say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed you, nor hurled hurtful words at you. Dad, I love you. Mom worries about you too. After you left, she couldn't eat or sleep properly every day, becoming skin and bones within weeks. We all miss you terribly. Please don't leave us, okay? Her tears fell onto the back of my hand. With all my strength, I wiped them away. Then, my gaze shifted to Fu Yining. Yining, now that things have come to this, it's time to let go. I finally uttered these words. I knew she'd been avoiding this issue, which was why her eyes never dared meet mine. Now, this matter must be resolved. After a long silence, Fu Yining spoke quietly. All right, I promise you. Under the gaze of me and Fudong, she signed her name on the divorce agreement. Time had passed, and we no longer had any entanglement. There was one last thing I needed to clarify before I died. My grandmother. Fu Yining smoothed my hair for me. Grandma had been waiting for you to return that day, but you encountered a flood on your way back and turned around to rescue the villagers. Grandma left with regrets, but she never once blamed you. She only hated that her body couldn't stay stronger to witness you building your own career with her own eyes. Grandma was proud of you, just like the rest of us. Tears trickled from the corners of my eyes into my salt and pepper temples, as my life quietly ebbed away drop by drop. I was a child of the people, but not a good grandson to my grandmother. Over the 30 years of poverty alleviation work, I could count on one hand the times I returned home to visit Grandma. I've devoted nearly all my time to the mountains in my country, yet forgot that in another mountain range, a figure still waited silently for my return home. Fudong noticed my fading breath, panically wiping away my tears. Dad, I twitched the corner of my mouth, trying to signal there was no need to worry. Fudong, your father hopes you'll grow into a good wife, responsible, accountable, and discerning between right and wrong. Don't grieve, forget your father. The voice abruptly ceased. After a moment of silence, in the hospital room, intense and sorrowful wails erupted immediately. True departure is when one is no longer remembered. Yet I believe